can you explain to us what exactly you do or how you do this reading?
Well, a lot of people think of it as like The Sixth Sense, the movie, and that's really not how it works at all. When I sit with a person, I just meditate.
He got married, and days later, his body betrayed him in ways no one could have imagined. Tyler Henry, the young man whose career is built on speaking to the dead, went from celebrating one of the happiest moments of his life to facing a series of medical events so extreme that even his most devoted followers struggled to keep up. For 6 months, Tyler confronted challenges that tested not just his body, but his mind and memory in ways few could comprehend. What really happened during that time? How did he endure the unimaginable while staying in the public eye? Join us as we give an update on Tyler Henry's heartbreaking health battles. Born into this, Tyler Henry Colwyn was born 3 months premature. He weighed 2 pounds and 12 ounces and spent weeks in a neonatal intensive care unit in a body that had not yet finished building itself, a beginning that set a precedent for the medical complexity that would follow him through the rest of his life. He was the son of Teresa, a single mother who raised him after his parents separated and grew up in the agricultural flatlands of the Central Valley with an experience of the world that he has described as always being slightly adjacent to what other children seem to be experiencing. He did not feel different. He felt like what he was, someone to whom the normal rules of perception did not fully apply. He was 10 years old when he told his mother he could sense that his grandmother was going to die. She died that night. He has described this moment in interviews and in his memoir, Between Two Worlds, not as a dramatic revelation, but as the quiet recognition of something he had already understood on some level for years. He had been picking up information that other people were not picking up and sensing or feeling things at the edges of conversations that did not have obvious sources. He had told himself, as children do, that this was normal. The night his grandmother died, he understood it was not. He was not frightened by it. He was, by his own account, relieved to have a name for something that had otherwise been disorienting. "I didn't set out to be a medium," he told people in 2016. "It chose me." That framing, the gift choosing the person rather than the person choosing the gift, runs through everything he has ever said about his work. He did not train to do this. He simply started doing what he could already do. And the world around him gradually caught up to what that was. His mother, Teresa, rather than dismissing what he described, took him to a woman who did psychic readings. That woman told Teresa that Tyler had a gift and needed to be guided rather than suppressed. From that point forward, Teresa became the practical engine behind Tyler's career, the person who managed the appointments, fielded the calls, and eventually became his manager when the career expanded beyond anything either of them had imagined. She also became, in later years, the subject of one of the most emotionally affecting moments Tyler ever produced on camera, when a Netflix documentary asked him to use his abilities to investigate the mystery of her biological father's identity, a secret she had carried for decades. The result was the 2022 Life After Death with Tyler Henry, in which the medium who talks to other people's dead attempted to solve a mystery in his own family's past. The mystery was resolved. The man who was Teresa's biological father was identified. Tyler's gift, applied to his own family, turned out to work the same way it worked for everybody else. The career that began with a grandmother's death, the night Tyler predicted it, grew into something that no 10-year-old in a Central Valley farmhouse could have anticipated. But before any of the television or the celebrity readings or the Netflix specials, Tyler had already been through a brain surgery that he almost did not survive. How young was he? And what did it cost him? The first surgery nobody talked about. Tyler Henry had his first brain surgery just after his 18th birthday. He was, by any measure, a child. He had been born with a congenital cyst near the center of his brain, a colloid cyst, which is a slow-growing, fluid-filled mass that sits typically at the junction of the third ventricle and can obstruct the flow of cerebrospinal fluid. Colloid cysts are not cancerous or harmless. When they grow large enough to block the drainage of cerebrospinal fluid, the pressure inside the skull increases, and the consequences of that increased pressure range from severe headaches and vision problems to sudden loss of consciousness, and, in cases where the obstruction becomes complete, death. They are associated with a specific and particularly cruel presentation. Some patients experience sudden collapse with no prior warning because the cyst can temporarily and completely block the ventricle during specific physical positions. The cyst that Tyler Henry had carried since birth had, by the time he was 18, become what he later described as a life-threatening situation. The surgery performed at 18 removed enough of the cyst to relieve the pressure and allow him to continue living normally. He did not make a public announcement about the surgery at the time. He was 18 years old, not yet on television or famous, and there was no audience to announce it to. He simply had the surgery, recovered, and moved forward into the career that was already forming around him. By the time Hollywood Medium premiered on E! Network in 2016, the first brain surgery was a part of his history that he mentioned occasionally in interviews as context for his medical background, but not something he dwelt on. He was young, he had recovered, and the tumor had sealed itself over the years following the surgery, which meant the situation was stable. It stayed stable for over a decade. And then, in 2025, it stopped being stable. In October 2024, during an interview with The Cut, Tyler had mentioned that he wondered whether the cyst might be related to his abilities. It was the kind of speculative comment that a person makes when they are trying to find a framework for why their brain is structured differently from other people's brains, why they perceive things other people do not perceive, and whether the physical anomaly at the center of their skull might be part of the explanation. He also said something in that same interview that, viewed in retrospect, carries a weight it did not carry when he first said it. "I'm here for a good time, not necessarily here for a long time." He was 28 years old and talking about mortality in the casual way that people talk about mortality when they have not yet been in a hospital with their head shaved. 6 months later, he had been in that hospital twice. The wedding happened on May 7th. The surgery happened on May 14th. 7 days between the best day of his personal life and a craniotomy. How does a person hold those two things at once? And what was going through Tyler Henry's mind in the week between getting married and going into brain surgery? 7 days between. The timeline of Tyler Henry's spring 2025 is almost impossible to process sequentially. He got married on May 7th. He was in surgery on May 14th. In the 7 days between those two events, he had a honeymoon week with his new husband that was almost certainly not the week either of them had imagined when they planned a wedding in Beverly Hills. The symptoms that had been building before the surgery, the grogginess, the inability to construct coherent thoughts, the sense that something was wrong with the way his brain was processing information, had apparently progressed to the point where his medical team decided that waiting was no longer an option. The tumor near the center of his brain had grown. The timeline would not accommodate the romantic version of a honeymoon. Tyler described the pre-surgery symptoms in a July 2025 interview with E! News with the specificity of someone who had spent a long time paying close attention to what his brain was doing. He described feeling groggy. He described being unable to construct coherent thoughts. He also described a fogginess that was distinct from ordinary tiredness, the kind of cognitive impairment that does not improve with sleep. He had been performing psychic readings professionally for years, and the thing he found most alarming about the pre-surgery period was that the clarity he normally brought to his work was compromised. He could not think straight. He was aware that he could not think straight. And the people around him, including Clint, could see it in a way that made the situation impossible to continue ignoring. The May 14th Instagram post after the surgery is one of the more remarkable documents of what it is like to be Tyler Henry. He is sitting in a hospital bed with a bandage on his head and a smile on his face, announcing a successful craniotomy, the way most people announce a haircut. Brain surgery was a success. Great prognosis, incredible staff, and I feel so thankful to be surrounded by my family. I'll be on bed rest for a month and look forward to getting back to doing readings. He added the now famous joke about the tumor being removed, not his brain. He thanked people for their well wishes. He was radiant, in the specific way that people who have just had something genuinely frightening turn out okay, are radiant. The relief of a great prognosis after brain surgery, expressed on Instagram while still wearing a hospital gown, is a form of gratitude that is hard to fake. He was not faking it. He was genuinely happy to be alive and thinking and married and recovering, and he wanted everyone to know it. The first surgery went well. The prognosis was great. He went home, started recovering, and within a month said he felt significantly better. And then, 5 months later, the symptoms came back. What did it feel like when Tyler and Clint realized the cyst had returned? The cyst that came back. By October 2025, the swelling had returned. The symptoms that had preceded the May surgery, the grogginess, the cognitive fog, the inability to think clearly, had begun reappearing in a pattern that Tyler and Clint both recognized from the months before the first operation. The cyst, which had been partially removed in May, had begun growing back. This is a known complication with colloid cysts. Partial removal can resolve the immediate symptoms, but does not guarantee that the remaining tissue will not regenerate. Tyler's medical team, monitoring his recovery, reached the conclusion that a second intervention was necessary. Clint Godwin broke the news on Instagram on November 13, 2025, in a post that was later deleted, but that had already been widely reported before its removal. As you might remember, my husband, Tyler Henry, underwent surgery in May 2025 to remove a cyst growing in his brain, he wrote. However, over the past month, symptoms of swelling slowly returned. Tyler's medical team decided that another surgery to address the recurring cyst and swelling was the best option. Today, Tyler underwent his third brain operation and is recovering well tonight. Clint followed up hours later with an additional post confirming the surgery had been successful and that Tyler would be headed home within a few days. The phrasing in both posts is worth sitting with. A husband describing his new husband's third brain surgery with the specific calm of someone who has learned, over the course of a difficult year, how to communicate devastating information without allowing the devastation to swallow the update. Clint Godwin married Tyler Henry on May 7th and spent the following 7 months writing Instagram posts about brain surgeries. The version of their first year of marriage that most married couples have did not happen for these two. What happened instead was something harder and, arguably, more revealing of who they are to each other than any honeymoon could have been. The November surgery was followed by a recovery that Tyler documented in a way that was both more raw and more specific than the May update had been. He was experiencing significant memory impairment, a known consequence of brain surgery, and the swelling and trauma that accompanies it. He posted to his Instagram story that he felt like a goldfish for the 2 weeks following the operation, able to hold on to about 10 minutes of short-term memory at a time. He noted that it was improving, but the image, a man who makes his living holding the memories and messages of the dead in his mind.
The interesting thing that kind of came in correlation with this was they were having me talk about an investigation. And this is where it gets interesting. There's so much of an emphasis on the investigative side of this.
Unable to hold the memory of his own morning conversations, carries an irony that he was clearly aware of. He also disclosed something that he had been sitting with since waking up from the surgery. He had experienced something out of body during the operation. He had written it down. He had drawn it. He said he would share it when the time was right. The goldfish memory, the out-of-body experience, the third surgery in 6 months. And then, just weeks later, a fourth update that changed the story completely. What happened in early December 2025 that finally gave Tyler Henry a different answer than the one he had been getting since May. The third surgery and the cyst finally gone. A third surgery followed in early December 2025, and this one produced the outcome that the previous two had not fully delivered. Tyler posted to social media shortly afterward with an update that carried a different register than either of the previous posts. They were finally able to remove the cyst. He added that the recovery demanded a lot of rest and that he would not be working for a bit. That was the instruction he had received after the May surgery too, and he had followed it then. By January 2026, he was posting that he was healing well, that the prognosis remained great, and that he was looking forward to returning to readings. By that point, his followers had spent 7 months watching someone they cared about go through a medical situation that would have broken many people, documented with the same openness and humor and faith that Tyler Henry had always brought to everything he chose to share publicly. The fan response across all 3 surgeries had been extraordinary.
I'm nervous because I wasn't until today. And you know, all my friends are so obsessed with this show that they all made me nervous. They would all line up outside right
An outpouring of support from people who had seen him read their celebrities on television, and people who had read about him online, and people who had received readings from him personally, and people who simply found, in watching him face something enormous with such transparency, something that helped them think about their own difficult situations differently. In July 2025, after the May surgery and before the November one, Tyler had told E! News something that put the whole experience into the frame he was using to understand it. I was worried with anything related to the brain that it might affect my ability. But I found that not having brain inflammation actually made things a lot clearer. The surgery had not diminished his capacity for the work he did. It had, if anything, sharpened it. The reduction in intracranial pressure and swelling had allowed him to think more clearly than he had been able to think in the months before the operation. Whatever Tyler Henry believes is happening when he does a reading, the physical health of the organ he does it with appears to matter to the quality of the experience, which raises the question that has followed his entire career. What exactly is Tyler Henry doing when he says he is communicating with the dead? Before answering that, or attempting to, it is worth understanding the full scope of what his career actually is. Because the Hollywood medium label understates considerably the reach and the seriousness with which he has pursued a career that most people treat as entertainment. What has Tyler Henry actually built? The career that built a life worth fighting for. Tyler Henry's E! Network show Hollywood Medium premiered in 2016 when he was 20 years old and ran for 4 seasons, producing some of the most watched moments in the network's history. He read Snooki and Khloe Kardashian and Amber Rose and Boy George and John Lovitz and dozens of others, each reading structured around the specific dynamic that makes his work compelling to watch. He would describe the physical sensation of the person who had passed, their personality quirks, specific memories, specific phrases they had used. Whether those details come from the dead or from the living is the debate that has followed him since the show began. It is genuinely unresolvable by either side. His Netflix special, Life After Death, with Tyler Henry in 2022, expanded the format in 2 directions simultaneously.
I think the conversations that it starts, a lot of people approach the subject of mediumship around belief, either a lack thereof or being all for it.
It brought him to everyday people who were not celebrities, which changed the dynamic in ways that made the readings feel less like a performance and more like a service, and it turned the lens on his own family, following him as he attempted to use his abilities to solve the mystery of Teresa's biological father. He has said in multiple interviews that the work is exhausting in ways that people who watch him on television cannot fully appreciate. In a 2022 interview, he said he felt old on the inside and that readings made him feel older, that he could not imagine living to 70 because of how drained the work left him. He said it the way people say things when they are genuinely stating something they have noticed about themselves, rather than crafting a narrative. Whatever you believe about Tyler Henry, one thing is clear: what he's been through would change anyone. The only question is, what comes next? What has Tyler Henry's work meant to you? And do you believe what he does is real? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.